Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, they were the images that caused global headlines, but 1 year on from the death of Alan Kurdi, how much has changed to deal with the migrant crisis? Alan, of course, was the 3-year-old Syrian child who was pictured face down in the sand on a Turkish beach after the boat he and his family were in sank as they tried to reach Greece. They were fleeing, of course, the civil war in Syria. Well, many of you will remember the image that we're about to show, and it is particularly distressing. If you have got small children, you might not want them to see it. Well, at the time, it was this photo of Alan's lifeless body lying face down on that beach that made the world focus on the migrant crisis. Of course, his brother and his mother also drowned. Well, the then Prime Minister David Cameron promised to give sanctuary to 20,000 Syrian refugees and then later said that the UK would become home to 3,000 unaccompanied minors. But what's happened to that pledge now that Theresa May, of course, is the new Prime Minister? Well, Alan Kurdi's father, who survived the disaster, has been speaking to the BBC's Fergal Keane.
When I spoke to you a year ago, you hoped that the death of your children might change the way the world treats refugees. Are you disappointed by what's happened since?
By
God Almighty, at first the presidents were excited and they worked to help. After a month, I heard nothing, not even a whisper.
What are the memories of the boys that come back to you?
I swear by God Almighty, this morning and every day he's in my memory. Today I felt they were visiting me and hugging me.
It's important to remember them as individuals and not just statistics in the refugee tragedy.
The tragedy at first made life much easier for poor refugees. But after a while, by God Almighty, there was nothing left. Nobody remembered Alan. He'd been forgotten, not even a whisper. By the way, there's something I have to tell you. A lot of people are calling their children Aylan. His name was Alan.
On this anniversary, what is your message to the leaders of Europe, to those who can help bring this refugee crisis to an end?
The question is for them to help the needy refugees. The situation is very dire. I swear by God Almighty it makes you cry.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to Juliet Stevenson, who's sitting here with me. We're going to be talking about the campaign she's been involved with to get more children over to the UK. She's even visited the Calais jungle, as it's known. But we're going to, before we speak to Juliet, we're going to cross over now to hear from Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary. He is about to meet EU foreign ministers, but he is stopping off in Austria on the way. He's speaking in Vienna. Let's have a listen to what he's saying.
Whatever our relationship with the European Union, I was very clear, and Minister Kurz also, I think, understands very clearly that we're not leaving Europe. We are leaving the European Union. We do want a strong European Union, but we also want a strong United Kingdom, and I think we share a vision for a new European partnership between the UK and the European Union, and ever closer relations with between Britain and Austria. I'm the proud possessor of a cowbell given to me by Doppelmayr, I am proud to say, because they built a wonderful cable car in London with European Union funds, and it was actually, of course, it was our money, but it was an Austrian investment in London, which we're very, very grateful for. And I also, of course, had the chance to congratulate Minister Kurz on his 30th birthday. Many happy returns. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Trigger Article 50.
Well, that was Boris Johnson speaking in Vienna, talking a little bit more about cowbells and 30th birthday celebrations than Brexit. But he was going to be meeting EU foreign ministers later on today, and hopefully we'll get more information on that later. But I'm pleased to say Juliet Stevenson, the actress and campaigner, is sitting here with me to talk about those dreadful images that we all saw a year ago of Alan Kurdi. And I think it's very difficult for anyone to look at those pictures and not feel moved. But do you think it changed anything? Because we heard this cliche, didn't we? It's a game changer. Everyone's going to change the way they deal with the migrant crisis. Do you think they did?
Well, I think it did for a while. I mean, that picture moved millions of people all over the world, and I think charities who deal with refugees said it was extraordinary for a while. You know, websites sort of spiked up to many thousands of hits every day, and there was a big response to the image of that little boy's body. But it didn't last. You know, many hundreds of children have died since he died. In this last year, and still the crisis goes on, and still, you know, we're not really meeting our responsibilities here to help them.
Well, let's talk about those responsibilities that you talk about. You've been to the jungle, as it's known, in Calais, and many unaccompanied children there. Just tell us about the sort of people you met and the conversations you had.
Yes, I've been several times. I mean, about 6 weeks ago, I went and interviewed a whole group of small boys between about 8 and 14 years old. They were Syrian and Afghani. I mean, I've never seen children in despair. You know, I've seen my own kids angry or frightened or upset, but I've never seen children in despair, and it's an incredibly shocking sight. You know, many of those children have now been living in this muddy field without their parents and without proper food or education or play spaces or protection for 9 months. You know, they've had a winter there, and they're facing another winter if we don't do something about it. I mean, we have a very proud tradition in this country, don't we? We brought 10,000 Jewish refugee children over in the war, you know, and we are rightly proud of that tradition. These are war victims too, you know, and we really need to be able to offer humanitarian help to them as long as these crises last, and then hopefully they'll be able to go home again. But
I want to bring in Mohammed. He's 15 years old, child refugee from the Syrian war. I'm not sure, and also Tim Farron as well, who is the leader of the Liberal Democrats. So Tim, I'll come to you in a moment. I want to speak to Mohammed. We're hoping to speak to him on Skype, but we've had a few technical problems, so we're going to speak to him on the phone. Mohammed, tell me what happened to you and your journey from Syria.
Hello. Our journey from Syria to Turkey, like to Germany, wasn't that much difficult. We just crossed the border. We slept one night at the Turkish border in a refugee camp, and yeah, like it took us just 3 months.
And you came with your mother, but you've lost contact with your dad.
Yeah, we lost contact with my dad from like 3 years. He'd been kidnapped by ISIS. And yeah, I came with my mother, with my 3 sisters.
It's just awful to imagine what you've been through at just 15 years of age. You've got no idea what's happened to your dad? You haven't had any word?
Well, actually, like a lot of people bring news to my mom. Some of them told her that he's dead, and they bring her photo, but it's fake photo. And some of them told her that he's alive. But we're actually not sure about it, if he's alive or if he's dead.
How difficult is that for you to deal with whilst you're trying to rebuild a new life with your mother, with your sisters?
Well, it's like a big responsibility, like me and just like 4 women, and I have to take care of them and like that. And like, you know, life in Germany, it's not that difficult, but like it's a little bit difficult for the refugee who came before 2 or 1 year and like that.
Have you managed to enroll at a school? Have you made friends? Do you feel like you're settling in Germany?
Yeah, well, actually, German people are very welcoming and very nice people. And yeah, I'm now at the school, and I made a lot of friends. They are actually like really nice people here. And they love everyone, like they never hated anyone.
Mohammed, it's great to hear that you're settling in. I can see Juliet's smiling, that there's some good story to come out of this. I want to bring Tim Farron in. Is that the kind of example of what you want to see here in the UK, of a young person from Syria being given an opportunity to have a new life?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the fact that the United Kingdom hasn't stepped up and provided that opportunity to people like Mohammed, who've got so much to give, and such a terrible place to escape from, to give those people opportunities is something which is in Germany's favour, enhances Germany's standing in the world, let's be honest, provides great new talent for that country, and we turn our backs. And, you know, listening to Alan Kurdi's father before brings back kind of the heartbreak for me again. You know, I've been to the jungle myself and been to some of the camps in Greece and met many of those young people in desperate circumstances that Juliet talks about. And I do think that photograph of Alan Kurdi's body on the beach last year was hugely powerful. I remember not being able to look at it myself, and it being one of the most moving things I'd ever seen. I remember sending a message to the independent editor who published that photograph, Amal Rajan, and just saying, you've done a really powerful thing here, because I think what did happen is that it took people's minds off a story that was being peddled by some, that the refugee crisis was all about dreadful economic migrants trying to take advantage of civilised society in the West. And it made people realise what this is really about. This was innocent, desperate families taking unspeakable risks, because the bigger risk was to stay put. And that picture changed a lot. But sadly, you know, a year ago, David Cameron was planning to take no refugees from the crisis area. And then after he did that, he pledged, by a lot of pressure from others, to take up to 20,000. Can I point out that he's taken, or this country, this government now has taken barely 1,000 in that 12 months. And it seems to me we have a government under Theresa May now, under David Cameron in the past, desperate to do the minimum possible to help these desperate people in order to just about assuage public opinion. That is why we need to keep up the pressure.
Before we talk about those numbers and the delays and what have you, Juliet, I'm interested to get your thought. And living in a world of social media as we do, you go through your Twitter feed in the day, there are so many disturbing images all the time that we're bombarded with from Syria, from Aleppo. Do you think there's a danger sometimes that we become almost desensitised? And an image, if we'd seen an image like Alan Kurdi, as horrific as it was maybe 10 years ago, it would have stayed with people more than in the social media age we live in.
I think that's a real danger, Chloe. Yes, I do. But I think, you know, what happens is that this conversation about refugees gets appropriated all the time. I think ordinary people saw that image a year ago and were profoundly moved. Many people who have kids and those who don't, you know, were very moved and wanted to do something. But the conversation keeps getting appropriated into politics. Now, if you're a kid living in Calais, desperate, without your mum and dad, without any education, you've been there, you know, hungry, you can't, you know, it doesn't help you that you're being used as a political pawn, you know. 178 of those children in Calais now have a legal right to be in the UK because they have close family here. Under an EU law, they are entitled to be reunited with that family. And one of the things we're doing this morning after the memorial for Alan Kurdi is to hand in a letter to Amber Rudd, the new Home Secretary, to say, please bring, there's 387 children, it's a tiny number, 387 children in Calais who have the legal right to be here. Some of them, about half, as I said, because they have close family here, and the other because they've been identified as extremely vulnerable, and under the Dubs amendment to the immigration bill that Cameron passed, need to be here. Now, the government said, you know, this is going to be the responsibility of local councils and so on. Well, many councils have said they're able and willing to do that, and actually quite a lot of councillors have been to Calais recently, last week. Very ready to do that, but we need the Home Office now to give it the green light. We need the support of this government to recognise the desperate plight of these children and as Tim said, to step up to our responsibilities. You know, we will be very ashamed of ourselves if we don't. Looking back at this period, we will be really ashamed of ourselves if history says these children were suffering in these numbers to this extent and we did nothing as a country. I don't think people want to be in a country that has that reputation.
Well, let me read you a couple of comments from people who are watching us and get involved. And of course, since the Brexit vote, immigration has been such a huge issue here in the UK. Karen on Facebook says, we have enough room, where's the humanity? Stop blaming this father. He was looking for a better future. We don't know the half of it and the world is to blame. However, Johnny on Facebook says 3 simple words: we are full.
Well, what does we are full mean? I mean, these are children who already have families in the UK. There's a bed waiting for these children in somebody's home somewhere. They are legally entitled to be here, you know. I know people are very worried about immigration, and I can understand that. I really, really do. But it's important to remember it's completely different talking about the free movement of people inside Europe, which was a big issue in Brexit, and I you know, that was one concern which I respect. But it's a completely different issue to children and families fleeing barrel bombs and gas and death in places like Syria or ISIS in Afghanistan. Those are two completely different categories. And what happens, unfortunately, is the whole thing gets lumped together as immigration, you know. But seeking sanctuary is an international legal right, and these are very, very tiny numbers, you know. The movements of people inside the EU, which was the Brexit sort of preoccupation, is a completely different subject, you know, which we're not talking about this morning.
But lots of people do confuse the issue together with immigration.
They do.
It is an issue. I want to bring Mohammed back in, who I'm hoping is still on the phone with us, from Germany. He's 15, he's settled in Germany. Mohammed, do you think that image of Alan Kurdi that we're talking about, of course, that was released a year ago today, do you think that made politicians in Germany change their mind? Is that why you feel you've got a home now in Germany?
Well, actually, the image, actually, it's made like in the first month. It made like people start to say we have to help them like that, and after that they stop like even thinking about the photo, and like people start to don't care. Like if they want to really to help, they can maybe just help, helping what's happening now in Syria, like taking out and what's happening now in Syria by ISIS and these criminals.
Mohammed, thank you so much for speaking to us from Germany. Juliet Stevenson, thank you for coming in, and also to Tim Farron.